Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chair, for your presentations here today and answers. I want to just ask you if you'd be willing to step aside for a moment in terms of just responding in terms of representing the Fed, and give us some of your personal thoughts, if you think it's appropriate, relative to a couple of, well, this question in particular. As I travel throughout Indiana and talk to businesses, large, small, and everything in between, so many of the CEOs and owners of those businesses, almost to a person, indicate that they're underperforming. And they're underperforming because of the uncertainty that they face relative to fiscal policies, relative to prospects of uncertainty about what their taxation is going to be, and particularly regulatory policy. Now, essentially, they say it's a disincentive to their the private sector business investment, which, as we know, is the foundation of job creation. Your predecessor, I asked your predecessor the question of whether or not, of what his opinion was relative to the policies that are really fall in our bucket up here. And he said, his answer was, you know, we pretty much exhausted the major tools that we have to address some of these problems. He agreed that these were disincentives for investment and sitting on an awful lot of unused capital. But he said, really, that's a function for you people at the other end of Constitution Avenue. And he's right. It is. But my question is, I think it was in your statement to the New York Fed, you made reference, let's see if I can find it here, you made reference to the fact that it's going to be, and I quote you here, a gradual return over the next 2 to 3 years of economic conditions consistent with the Fed mandate. And given that, would you be willing to give us some direction relative to what legislative policies we could take or not take, and the consequences of either accelerating that movement to where we want to get to beyond the 2 or 3 year period, or the disincentivizing and perhaps pushing that even further out? What recommendation would you give to us in terms of dealing with this uncertainty that's basically causing a lot of businesses to underperform?
So I agree with you. My own discussions with businesses, I hear exactly the same things that you're citing, concern about regulations, about taxation, about uncertainty, about fiscal policy. I guess one recommendation that I would give you is that long-term budget deficits, we can see in, for example, CBO's very long-term projections that they remain. There is more work to do to put fiscal policy on a sustainable course, that progress has been made over the last several years in bringing down deficits in the short term, but that a combination of demographics, the structure of entitlement programs, and historic trends in healthcare costs, we can see that over the long term, deficits will rise to unsustainable levels relative to the economy, and putting in place a package of reforms. I know these are very controversial matters, but that would probably help confidence. As regulators ourselves in the aftermath of a financial crisis, we also can see very clearly, for example, that the kinds of regulations we're putting in place during the process of doing that create uncertainty and burdens. We hear this, for example, from community banks all the time. And, here I would say, to some extent, the regulations, we're doing this for a very good reason. We had a financial crisis. It's important to make the financial system safer and sounder. And for our own part, we will try to make sure that we worry about regulatory burden. We we try to design regulations that are different and appropriate for different sectors of the economy. I think it's important for us, too, to be sensitive to regulatory burden in order to minimize its impact on the economy. But we are doing things that are important to make the economy safer and sounder.
Well, thank you for that answer. And in closing here, because I've been noticed that my time is up, you join a long list of very responsible Americans who have the experience and the expertise to give us some warnings about what may happen in the future and the consequences of our inability to act over the last several years now in addressing these major problems that are going to have significant consequences on the economy of this country and on future generations. I don't know what it's going to take for us to summon the will to do what we all know that we need to do, but I appreciate your adding your name to that long list, saying you have a responsibility up here and you're not fulfilling that responsibility. Thank you.
Senator Casey.